This is where technique runs out and artistry begins. This is what this business is all about, and it's one of the reasons why we will never be replaced by some type of machine. Because even if I was to program that machine myself with every single step that I did on a customer, it's gonna be different for every single customer walking through this door right now. Some of them are gonna have thick hair, thin hair, half thin hair, half thick hair. They're gonna have curly hair, straight hair, a mixture of the both. And no matter what you decide to deploy, it's gonna be different from customer to customer. And that's why the 6 phases is a great approach. That's why the faded acronym is so important. When we find out what the client wants, we leave no room for error. We're gonna ask all the probing questions that we need to make sure that me and the client are on the same page. But when we analyze and adapt, this is the most important part of any haircut. Combing through it, looking at any potential problem spots before they arise, and making a plan to adapt for them. I've been dropping a ton of content lately. All these big tutorials I've been dropping, some of them are over an hour long, 45 minutes, and I'm telling every single thing there is to do about a haircut. And if you guys haven't seen some of them videos, you guys can check them out in the description below. But through it all, some of you guys have been asking some really good questions, like how do I develop my barber eye? How do I tell the difference between a shadow or a line? Good barbers do not struggle with lines because they understand some of the key principles that we're gonna break down in this video. But good barbers are always gonna struggle with shadows. If you got a barber out here right now who tells you, I never struggle, everything is easy. Now that may be true to some extent because he's developed some skills to help him conquer some of these challenges, but he is a lion if he tells you he never struggles, because I have clients that walk in here and every once in a while, I'm gonna struggle. Every once in a while, I might mess up in my analytical phase of the haircut and not see a colic. I might cut something too short. I might not realize that the client's hair is a lot thinner on the left side than it is on the right. We're all humans, we're all gonna make mistakes, and we're all gonna try to just do our best. And that's why this is a practice, this is an artistry, and this is something that is really difficult to actually master. But on the other side of that, anybody who really works at this can figure this out. It's not rocket science. So today, shadows versus lines. Let's get started. I'm gonna give you guys 5 different things that I do to avoid these problems, and I'm gonna give you guys a ton of advice on how to deal with this when your clients walk in. And I'm gonna give you guys a little mental health checkup, so let's get started. So we need to learn how to spot potential problems before they get started, and that's what the faded acronym is for. So I'm analyzing and I'm adapting. I'm looking for the light spots, I'm looking for if his hair is thick on one side, thin on the other, a weird colic, one that's dead in the center or in the neck. Like all of these things are gonna add up to some type of equation that's gonna allow me to deploy my 6-phase approach, probably differently for some people, and for the majority of people, exactly the same. If you guys appreciate content like this that actually makes an impact, this is education that makes a difference for the barbers out here. This is the YouTube Barber Academy, where we have over 700 videos to help you learn, and we are dropping new content daily in the short form and 2 quality uploads a week, especially for my members. So a lot of you guys are asking how to join the membership. Just click the link in the description. It is literally the very first link. Click on that and bang. Small price to pay, $5 a month. The membership is growing. Join Eddie's Army. So let's get started with the first thing that we need to know. What is the difference between a line and a shadow? As you guys can see, there is a super crispy line on my beard. And typically a line is going to happen when I take my clipper, I have it completely flat on the head, and I have it horizontal. And that's gonna create a line that's about the width of the clipper blade. In order to be able to get any lines out, we need to have our setup correctly. I'm gonna briefly touch on this, but we dove deep on this in the masterclass. But one of these clippers has a taper blade on it. It is set back, it is not zero gap. And the other clipper has a vapor blade, or if you're in your shop, it might be a fade blade. But having these two is gonna give you a lot of different advantages. But for one, if I have one clipper zero gapped, then I'm never gonna struggle with a line no matter how harsh I put it in. Between this, using my trimmer and using my electric shaver, I'm going to be able to remove that line. And if you want to see how we remove those lines, go ahead and check out that 1-hour masterclass, and you guys will see a thorough process that shows you how to eliminate that line. But when it comes to shadows, shadows are tricky. I can give you a step-by-step process to remove lines. I have done so over and over again throughout so many of these videos. But when it comes to shadows, there's a few things that we want to keep in mind. We're going to talk about the lift, tip, and flick, but there's something really important that we got to talk about before we even get into any of that. Now, barbershops are notorious for shitty lighting situations, such as this one, where you can hardly see my face, but you can see the rest of the shop. So I am just cloaked in shadows. Now, over the years, a lot of barbers are wising up to this, and it's become a very normal thing to have proper lighting on your station. Now, you can listen to all my tutorials, you can follow any steps you want, or anybody else's for that matter. But if you don't have good lighting, you're setting yourself up for failure. This station here is Johan's. He's got a ring light. Kenny, he has a panel light. Me personally, I really like these low profile panel lights. They're really small, they're on a gooseneck, I can bend them around, I get some really good photos out of it, but this thing kicks out a ton of light onto my client and allows me to see what I'm doing. Now, some of you guys are gonna prefer like a ring light like this. This is a much softer light. It's actually gonna look better in photos, and it's gonna be a little bit better looking to work with than this one, but it comes at the cost of such a big thing on your station. So Chad has actually mounted one to the ceiling. Now, over here in the land of Chad, he's got one, kind of plugged into the wall. He's got another one standing here. So he's trying to get like a 3-point lighting setup. So that's similar to like a studio. But if you can't see what you're doing, you're not going to be able to remove these shadows, and you're probably going to struggle with lines too. Let's go on to number 2. The next thing that we need to understand is how all of our equipment works with each other. If you have never done so, I really encourage you guys to go watch all the diagramming I did. I showed you guys the fade circle, the fade triangle, and a whole bunch of different things that are gonna help you understand how your stuff works together. I think that is the most important thing. But one ironclad fact for number 2 is that the moment I begin blending, I'm going to put my clipper on an angle. When I take my clipper up flat like this alongside of the head, that's when I'm probably gonna create a problem. Or altogether, I'm gonna have this movement going on here where I'm just using the corner of the blade. Now, if I make a mistake with the corner of the blade, it's gonna be a much smaller mistake, but that is kind of a form of texturizing, and we're gonna get into a couple of different ways to do it. But one of the very first things we do when we're setting in guidelines, sure, we want it horizontal. Our goal is to create a straight guideline. We might soft set a guideline by using the C motion, but we want it to be a nice straight line because it's the foundation of our cut. With that being out of the way, whatever other guidelines I set, I'm gonna repeat that process, but the moment I begin blending, you will never see me doing anything other than touching one of the sides of the clipper down, holding it on an angle, or you might see me lifting it out in a way, which we covered in that previous video as well. So there's several different ways that you can texturize with a clipper. And what we're doing here when we're defeating shadows is we're trying to remove some of the bulk, and we're trying to make it look uniform around the head. This can be a time-consuming process, made a lot faster with some good lighting, but if you take your time and you work in panels, you're gonna save yourself so much trouble. So when I'm at the point in my haircut where I'm chasing after shadows and I'm trying to get everything to kind of tie together, what I'm going to do is I'm gonna work in panels. I'll isolate the left side of the haircut. I'll worry about all this. I'll isolate the right side of the haircut. I'll worry about all this, and then I'll work on the back as panel number 3. All right, so we have a couple of tools here, and I have my texturizing shears and I have my actual shears. So these shears are 6.5 inches. So what I'm going to do is some shear over comb, and when I do that, I'm really removing a very small amount of hair. Now, I can also use just the tip of the shear, and I can tap it right on the scalp. You guys will see me do this a lot to break up a section. This is usually used when I got like a swirling, curling pattern and I'm kind of fighting a shadow. I'm somewhere in between a pretty good blend and I'm almost there. So this is a perfect time. Whip out the shear over comb or whip out the texturizing shears. Now, I'm gonna do these both about the same way. If you're not comfortable, I would definitely recommend that you pick up your texturizing shears first. Now, once you get better at cutting hair, you'll realize that the texturizing shears can cause a lot of problems too. So if somebody like over texturizes this area, it's gonna look super thin and it's gonna be really hard to make that match all the way around the head. Get comfortable with shear over comb and using texturizing shears and just different texturizing techniques, especially the one where we literally lay the tip of the blade on the client's scalp and we chip away into some of these sections. That's really gonna help reduce some of those shadows. But I'm sure some of you guys are probably sitting here and you're like, but I can't even see them. So maybe you're new at this. You suck. It's okay. You're supposed to suck. You're not supposed to know how to do this. If everybody could do this, then everybody would do this. Barbering can make you a really nice living. So one of the first things I'm going to tell you, before we talk about the barber eye and how to develop it, I don't want you guys sitting here picking yourself apart, causing yourself a bunch of stress for no reason at all. So you need to address this with a degree of confidence. You can't be out here wondering if you're going to be able to do this or not. It doesn't make a difference if you make a couple of mistakes. It's okay.
Editor here, Eddie. I'm just going to say there's one thing that I didn't mention in this video, and that is how powerful of a tool your cell phone can be. When you don't know what you're doing, when you don't know what you're looking for, it's so much easier to pull out your cell phone. They over sharpen the image. They make it look terrible most of the time, but it will help lead you to some of the areas that are not uniform, some of the areas that are too dark. You might even spot a line that might not even technically be there, but using your cell phone's camera just to help clue you into where you need to go, that's a good tip right there. Back to the video.
Now, when you're working, you're down here in the trenches, you're seeing the shape of the head, you're working with the client's hair, you're seeing how the curl is, you're seeing all these things, right? It's really important that we're glancing at our mirror. It's really important that we're standing back a little bit if we can't see it. And a lot of you guys, I know this for a fact, when I worked at the school, a lot of you guys were cutting just to cut. Just because you did the number one in this section, you went over to the other side of the head and did the number one because you thought it was going to create some balance or some symmetry. This is where the artistry comes into it. This is why it's going to be impossible for a robot to replace you, because they're just never going to be able to understand that. I couldn't just program a robot to go around and do all the same steps I do, because it will never be the same for every single customer. So let's think of this as some artistry. And you can only paint as well as you're able to right now. And little by little, you're gonna start to develop things that work and things that don't. And you're gonna have a good repertoire of stuff that you can deploy. So what you will see me doing is a combination of lifting the clipper off the head, tipping it, using the corner. I will pick up my shears. I will go through my guard system. I'll go up a step, down a step. I am just using all the information that I know. Okay, let's start this section out. Okay, it looks like a number one is gonna fix it. Okay, number one didn't fix it. Maybe it's the area above, maybe it's the area below. A lot of times you guys are chasing after a shadow or a dark spot, and it's actually not even on the spot you're looking at. It's actually slightly above it. So use your eye, look at the whole canvas, look at the top part of the blend, look at the bottom part of the blend, and decide where would it actually make the most sense to try to attack this from. Because sometimes when we're towards the end of a haircut, I would never want you guys to go from the bottom up, because you're probably gonna create a line, which would be a big disaster at this point. We're trying to texturize, we're trying to remove these shadows. You don't wanna create that. I want you guys to think about this from the fade scale point of view. Remember in the beginning when I told you guys, all of you could shave a head with a number two. So if we work our way down off of that number two, okay, two didn't do it. Let's go to 1.5, open, close, that didn't do it. Let's go to one, open, close. Work your way down through these steps until you find what it actually is that matches that length. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, man. That is the number one thing, because a lot of you guys are out here, you're just terrified. You think that your reputation will be destroyed. You think that you'll be ruined, but you won't. It's all good. And remember this too. Your clientele was never built on one single person. So even if you have a dissatisfied customer, let's face it, that one single person was not enough to make you a successful barber. You're gonna need hundreds of people. You're gonna have plenty of bad experiences. You're gonna cut people. You're gonna make mistakes with the haircut. And at the end of the day, it's okay. But I guarantee you, if you stick with it, if you push through, if you persevere, you guys are gonna be as good at this as anybody else. This is not rocket science. Anybody can learn this, and that's why you guys are subscribed to the YBA. So if you guys are feeling the lesson that we dropped on you today, drop it in the comments. Of course, I'm gonna be running some clips beside me, showing you guys all the different things that I'll do during a haircut to try to get that delay right. And most of these barbers are lying ass when they tell you they don't struggle or they don't have issues. I have clients on a daily that I struggle with. So I guarantee you, if you're new, you're gonna struggle too. So at the end of the day, man, we're all humans. We're all out here trying to do the best that we can. This is the YBA, 700 videos to help you learn. Subscribe if you're feeling it, and check out some of these other videos. They're down below in the comment section. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace. Just a quick recap. We're not gonna be able to fix any of these problems if we can't see them. So if you don't have good lighting in your shop, get some kind of supplemental lighting on your station. All right, that is the most important thing. The second thing, we have to make sure that we have our machines set up correctly. So if you guys haven't seen that video where I broke that down, there will not be enough time in this video to break this down. But I will say you're going to need at least 2 trimmers, one that's set back, one that's set close, 0 gap, and you're gonna need 2 clippers, one that's set back and one that's set close and 0 gapped. If you have that, you're gonna have everything you need to hit every single length. There's a couple more things in that video. You really need to check that out. But if you have the correct tools, you have all the guards, and you have the ability to see it, well, we're a lot closer to accomplishing our goals.